We need to talk briefly about assessment systems in GEC because the testing is baked into the platform in this interesting way. So we have two main test engines. One is called double fallback, and we call this a broad spectrum test. Basically what it means is it will traverse an entire course quickly and take a snapshot, take a quick analysis of the student's knowledge of an entire domain of, the academic domain or whatever. So this is broad spectrum. Narrow spectrum is inside a lesson. So this is across many lessons, and this is inside a lesson, and they work a little bit differently. So what we'll do with double fallback, it's called double fallback, is because we'll get 4 primary questions, and then we'll get 4 secondary questions. And the way we identify them, you'll see it here. We'll choose for double fallback here, right? We'll choose which ones are primary. So what that means is what four questions best represent a complete knowledge of this lesson. And then what the secondary questions are for is in case the student fails 1 out of 4. Because if they get 4 questions out of 4, we know that they don't need to take all 20 questions. We just say that, well, that's a placement test, or that's a knowledge retention test. And like you would apply double fallback either before you assign a sequence of lessons, or you would assign it after you define a sequence of lessons. If you define it before, of course, that's a placement test. If you define it after, of course, that's a knowledge retention test. So broad spectrum. Now what carry forward does is it takes 8 problems and delivers just the problem body, or the micro assessment. And then the problems that the student knows, it eliminates. So say out of those 8 problems, the student knows 5 of them, and there's 3 left. Well, what it'll do then is it'll take the micro test and deliver those 3. No, it'll take the micro lesson and deliver those 3 little teaching nodules. It'll deliver those as sequentially. Then when it's done delivering the training part, it'll go back to the testing phase, where it adds like 5 more new ones, but it carries forward the 3 little micro tests that the student missed. And let's say this time the student gets 2 of 3 of these, 2 out of 3, what 1 is left. Well, it will carry forward that to the next cycle, and that is inside it actually happens inside the lesson. Now we can apply carry forward as a main engine too. It's really good for vocabulary, for example, this learning cycle, or it's really good for like math problems that are repetitive math problems. So carry forward is good for that, but we also use it as our main intervention engine in our learning cycle. And so to understand how the assessments work, we can either assign them in what we call a persistent fashion, where they all work together to accomplish this cycle, or we can assign them in an episodic way, where they don't control any learning cycles. They just report to the teacher either interlesson student knowledge or the broad spectrum student knowledge, right? Now, inside a teacher's account, let me go to a class here, for example. Well, let's see. I want to go to a class that has a lot of assignments in it. Maybe here. I think this class has a lot of assignments. Maybe not. Go to GEC school in class 5. This probably has a lot of assignments. Okay, there's a lot of assignments in this class. So if I actually go into a, let's see. No, I need to go back to that again, right? If I go in and look at perhaps, do we have grammar? Yeah, right. So here's a grammar where I've got 2. Here's where I have 9 lessons assigned. Now, if I assign double fallback engine here, if I assign DDF for every one of these lessons, then it's persistent application, because it's going to control the students' progress through this sequence of lessons, right, through this course. So if the student doesn't know the domain material, it's going to slow them down. If they do know the domain material, it's going to speed them up. And it'll follow this kind of a sequence where you give them a placement test first. If they get the 4 answers correct, it will pass them. It'll just pass them, and it'll give them the double fallback assessment for lesson 2. If they fail that 4, then they'll get a 6 out of 8 opportunity. If they fail that, then they get the lesson, and that's the double fallback. Now, if they pass the lesson, fine, they go to the next double fallback assessment for lesson 3. Okay, now they passed that lesson, they're on lesson 3, it gives them an assessment, they fail the assessment. They get the lesson, they fail the lesson, now they go into this intervention sequence where the carry forward will kick in, and it'll continue giving them the wrong answers over and over again, carrying forward those wrong answers until the student gets a passing score, which I think usually is set to 75%, at which point they'll go to lesson 5 and get the placement test. So this is the learning cycle that is. And when we turn on double fallback in this environment, then the learning cycle, it actually controls the student's progress through the lesson sequence. However, if we go back to the lesson calendar, and we want to, where's today? And we want to assign a test here, right? We can take and assign that same, I don't know which grammar lesson that was, but we can assign that grammar lesson here, and we can assign it as double fallback or carry forward. We can choose which one. This is not going to control the student's flow. It's just going to report to the teacher. It's just going to give you a results report. So we can use these same engines either persistently to control the student's flow, right, their progress through the course, or we can use them episodically in this calendar, right? So persistent application or episodic application of our tests. And I'm not going to demonstrate them here because this is meant to be a short, sort of an introductory video, but it's very useful to actually go in and take the episodic and the persistent tests and actually see how they perform and see how they control your flow through the lesson material if you want to have completely asynchronous teaching.